BSN's Motoring 95 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life. And Midas, for brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service, trust your car to Midas.
Now here's a situation that I know all drivers dread. You just bought yourself a brand new car, you pull up to a stop sign, and lo and behold beside you is that same car, same model, same color. I mean, for instance, we've got ourselves a brand new Jeep here, and who pulls alongside but another brand new Jeep. As a matter of fact, there's another Jeep, and another Jeep, and another Jeep, and there just seems to be nothing but Jeeps here. I think there's definitely something going on. It certainly appeared that everyone in Parry Sound, Ontario owned a Jeep. They were simply everywhere. But most of these Jeeps were from other parts of Canada and the United States. They were in town to participate in an event known as the Jeep Jamboree.
Jeep Jamboree initially started in 1952 in the United States, just west of Lake Tahoe. Mark Smith got the organization going there. We've launched the Canadian program now. We're in our 5th year with it, with Jamborees in Alberta, British Columbia, and of course here in Ontario. We're going to expand the program into Quebec next, then most likely the Maritimes, and hopefully into maybe the Manitoba area. Well, we do have a reputation as being, redneck, beer-bellied, something or others, but the image does need some work. There's no question about that, and that again is one of the reasons we started Jeep Jamboree. What we're trying to do is educate people on responsible use of a great natural resource we have. In the United States, in the last 15 years, 42% of their trail network has been closed to motorized access, and we wanted to try and stem that tide, and the only way to do that is through education, because closing people out doesn't educate the next generation. You have to use education to do that, and of course that's what brings us to today, and what you got to see when you were driving on the trails here at Georgian Bay. The type of people we get mainly to the Jamboree, though, their vehicles are like 3 years old or newer. They're the primary transportation of the driver. Quite a few of them bring their families, quite a few of them come solo, but generally Jeep Jamboree is a romantic getaway for couples.
Romantic? Now, I'll admit that Northern Ontario is a beautiful area, and yes, it offers some incredible off-road experiences, but does this look romantic? What I would like to know is, what did this man promise you to get you out here in the middle of nowhere with only mosquitoes around?
Gee, truth, right?
Yes.
A wonderful, wonderful 2 days with Jeep Jamboree. He promised me it would be wonderful, that's all.
Is that all you had to do? There's a lot of men at home saying, how on earth did you get her out here?
Well, we've taken some new life insurance policies. We've transferred the names of our boats, cars, and houses into my wife's name, and I have to go hill climbing by myself here.
I get the feeling, too, that your wife, you're expecting maybe a 5-star dinner when you get home?
I would certainly expect that, yes.
Are you having fun?
Yes, we're having a great time.
Yeah, get that mosquito out of here.
Get my mosquito out.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, we got a little obstacle here, a rock right in the middle there. If you're gonna take it, I suggest you come over this way. You'll be a little off camera, go slow. I don't think you'll get stuck. Go around, but don't hit that with your diff, okay? It's a word of warning, sound advice. Please take it. Slow down. Thank you.
Who's driving? Whose truck is that?
That's my girlfriend's truck, thank God. I mean, I tell you, this is really... The poor thing is having an aneurysm. And you're seeing it live on the Sports Network. I hope that was the right name.
Good luck.
I'll do my special face. This is the face I make whenever we're coming to a big pothole. Here she comes. Can we get a shot of this, please?
You did it. What's the thing you fear the most when you come out here with people?
Well, the thing I fear the most is I don't want to leave anybody behind. Because out here, you should never go four-wheeling alone. You should always have somebody else with you and a winch in case you do get in trouble. We've had a few people stuck here today, and of course, if you're out by yourself, that could be a nightmare.
So I guess you thought you were pretty smart when you wore your rubber boots, eh? How's it going?
Well, they make good water holders.
A little wet?
Yeah.
They say the majority of people that buy sport utilities never even put them in four-wheel drive. What do you think of those people?
Well, I think they're missing a lot of fun. Friends of ours have one, and I don't think it's been in four-wheel drive too many times. I just think they're missing a lot of fun and a lot of good times, especially a chance like to come out like this.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we're in the heart of Germany to put Bavaria's very best vehicle through its paces. This is the 1995 BMW 740, a car that's been re-engineered and redesigned from the road up.
When you talk 7 Series, you talk about a vehicle that sits on a higher plane when it comes to technology and the manner in which it's been put to use. Throughout the vehicle, the level and sophistication of this technology has to be marvelled at. The interesting part being that the electronics account for about 25% of the total vehicle cost. This figure is high and is a good indication of just how advanced the 740 actually is. Under the hood is a 4-litre V8 engine. It's a 32-valve 4-cam fire breather that features all the usual stuff. Power is rated at 286 horsepower and 214 pounds-feet of torque. This power is relayed to the road via a 6-speed manual gearbox. When so equipped, the 740 will eclipse the 100k mark in 7 seconds. That's the good news. The bad news being that the 7 Series will not be offered with the stick shift in Canada. Shame on you, BMW. The automatic version we will get takes about 8 seconds. While still quick, it lacks the initial punch of the manual version. To keep this car manageable, the 7 Series features automatic stability control or traction control. As one would expect, the system prevents wheel spin by reducing both engine power and braking the offending wheel. The degree of stability this system gives this very capable car is impressive. In a nutshell, it turns a car that would be undrivable in winter into one that's highly drivable. When it comes to occupant safety, the 740 again hits the bullseye. You have the aforementioned traction control plus dual airbags. These things feature an occupant detector in the passenger seat. If the seat is not occupied, the airbag will not deploy, which avoids a lot of unnecessary repair cost. You also get a solid unibody that features lateral strengthening in the floor pan where the seats are located and standard anti-lock brakes. During the brake tests, I hauled this heavy car to a halt in 117 feet from 80k. BMW get top marks for pedal feel. It is easily modulated, giving the driver a degree of latitude before the ABS kicks in. The suspension is comprised of a double pivot McPherson strut style up front with a new multi-link system in the back. The beauty of the new rear suspension is that it allows for a degree of rear wheel steering during hard cornering and yet provides superior straight line stability. On the road, the system provides a good balance between ride comfort and handling characteristics. The system also includes anti-squat and anti-jive geometry, which helps the handling during hard braking or acceleration. When pushed, the car feels very poised with minimal understeer and very little body roll, and on the highway the ride is quite simply impeccable. Inside, the 740 lacks for little. The front seats are fully articulated affairs that feature an adjustment for shoulder support. On a long drive, this adjustment eliminates a lot of the usual fatigue, as well as providing the driver with a solid base from which to drive the car. Needless to say, comfort abounds. While the dash is analog in design, it features a bewildering array of readouts that gives the whole shebang an intimidating appearance. That said, it is easy to read and interpret.
I do have a pet peeve with this 740. First of all, there's a Mickey Mouse fuel economy meter on the dashboard. It's totally redundant because of the trip computer. The second thing, the telephone sits in the armrest and the passenger has a terrible habit of elbowing all of the buttons, which sets off that silly noise. This thing needs a cover on it because after all, you do have hands-free operation.
The steering wheel houses the controls for the cruise control plus the auxiliary controls for the radio and hands-free portion of the telephone. On the subject of the radio, it houses more buttons than you can shake a stick at. Elsewhere, the switches for the power windows, locks and mirrors are all conveniently placed in the door panel. The rear seat environment is comfortable and provides generous amounts of head and legroom. And last but by no means least, the trunk is enormous and houses a very handy toolkit.
Well, that's it for this week's test drive. I think it's safe to say that BMW have got the right ingredients in this new 740. Now, most of this test drive we've poodled around Bavaria on secondary roads. Well, it's now time to let this baby have a head where she was born to run, and that's on the Autobahn. It's amazing how many bugs you collect on a windshield at 200 kilometers an hour.
During this Jeep Jamboree here in Northern Ontario, drivers have come across many campsites like this one. Now, you'd like to think that people who come out and enjoy the environment would also respect it. Dream on. This is just some of the garbage that they've discovered on the trail, and they've cleaned up. You know, part of the off-roading etiquette is to leave the trail cleaner than you found it. So off-roading can not only be fun, but productive also. And speaking of productive people, let's now head to the garage and join Bill Gardner.
Now, in an automotive braking system, obviously you're trying to create friction in order to slow the vehicle down. So the last thing you want on your brakes is oil or grease, something that could break up that friction or modify it. Now, in this particular vehicle, we've got just about every conceivable kind of a problem in this braking system that you could possibly have. And our major problem in this case is a leaking rear axle seal and a leaking wheel cylinder. The brake shoes have become all contaminated with a greasy, oily substance that you can see here. It's a heck of a mess. It's combined with all the dust that normally comes off the brakes as they wear, and it's created a real greasy paste in there. Now, this is the kind of problem that you could have on the rear brakes of a rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicle, where you've got a differential that's lubricated by gear oil. There's a seal out here by the wheel, just behind the wheel bearing in here, and that's intended to keep excess oil from entering the brake area. But in this particular vehicle, the seal has failed, and the rear end oil has been slung out by the axle shaft as it turns. It whips it all out onto the brakes, contaminates the brake shoes, gets all over the brake drum. As you can see here, the brake drum's glistening with it, and it's actually wet with that fluid. Now, normally this should look dry and dusty, a little bit rusty, as a matter of fact, is normal look for everything except for the area swept by the shoes. Now, when we removed the drum on this vehicle, we also had a handful of brake hardware dangling around in the wheel, and there was noise from this wheel. So everything had sort of come apart here because of this problem. Now, what we're going to have to do to rectify this situation is replace the leaking axle seal. That's going to require us to pull out the axle shaft. That's what I was starting to do with the impact gun. We're going to pull the axle shaft out, replace the seal, either rebuild or replace the wheel cylinder that was leaking, and replace these shoes because they've become contaminated. Now, if you catch this in the early stages, you can degrease or clean the shoes with an aerosol brake cleaner. But when they get to this stage of the game with this much muck, you're going to have to replace them. Now, the things that you look for, early signs of this kind of problem, are premature lockup of the rear wheels, one or both of the rear wheels locking up under moderate braking. Stains on the backside of the backing plate. If it looks black or wet looking, that's an indication it could be leaking. Or you could pick something like this up on a routine brake inspection. You could catch it in the early stages and probably just degrease the shoes and repair the problem. It wouldn't quite get to this stage. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 95.
It appeared that Delaware was the place to be in southern Ontario over the Labor Day weekend. Over over 20,000 sun-drenched fans showed up for a weekend of CASCAR racing with the featured race, the McCurley-Millen 300.
CASCAR is the Canadian Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. It's the only sanctioning body that has a national program that runs across Canada, and you might say it's a kind of a copy of NASCAR, but in our own terms. We run on quarter-mile racetracks to half-mile, 5/8 being kind of the biggest racetrack that we would run at, where NASCAR obviously starts at 5/8 of a mile or a mile and goes up. So we've tailored this program to look very, very much like a NASCAR car, but also we have to keep in mind that we do run on smaller racetracks and smaller venues.
But there's nothing small about this event. With 41 cars in the field, a record purse of over $94,000, and at 300 laps, it's the longest race of the year. Kerry Mix won this race last year. Then he went on to win the national championship. But coming into this event, Kerry is sitting 8th overall.
Yeah, we've had some bad luck this year. We had a really good year last year, and this year, as far as we had some breaking of parts in the differential and the rear end, and we've got those problems solved now, and we're going forward. We're leading the race in the 100 lapper here this weekend, and we got a flat tire. We ended up finishing 5th, so we're starting 12th today.
This is a big race for Alex Nagy. He currently leads the overall standings and could win the national crown with a win.
Our year's been great. This ACDelco Roberts stable of Lumen has been awesome, and we've won some events, and we've been leading the points championship for the national and for the Eastern Canadian Championship for about the last 2 months. So things have been really good, and we got one event left, and we're leading both of them going into this. So that's all you can ask. We're going to give it our best shot.
Today's McCurley-Millen 300 is going to be a super race. I think the level of competition throughout the field is very deep. I mean, we're starting in 16th place, right behind the GM Goodwrench car of Dan Shirtleff, the Midas car of last year's series champion. I mean, the field is so deep this year. If we just run smart, stay out of trouble, and hook up with some of the lead cars, try not to get a lap down, because I mean, with this number of cars, it's going to be easy for that to happen, and we'll just keep chugging up to the front.
Defending champion Kerry Mix is in the number 2 Midas Oldsmobile. Mechanical problems plagued him all day, and he would finish 29th. Peter Gibbons in the number 9 car saw his chances for the title disappear as he struggled with handling problems following this flat tire and a brush with the wall that sent him to the pits. Points leader Alex Nagy had the same kind of day and finished 24th. It was the kind of day when anything that could happen did. Ask Scott Lindsay, who left the pits with more than a full tank of gas. 300 laps later, it would be Dan Shirtcliffe of Huntsville, Ontario, who would take the checkered flag.
I feel really good. This car handled pretty nice today. We got a flat tire at the halfway point there and got a tire on, and it was a pretty nice drive all day long. The track was breaking up in 1 and 2 because the gravel was coming up the racetrack and eating away at the asphalt. But this car was kind of set up nice for a slippery track today, and crew did a nice job with the car, and I feel real good right now. We needed a win bad. We've been 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th all year long, and there's nothing like a win.
A couple of popular vehicles reached milestones in 1994. Acura sold its 1 millionth car south of the border, 8 years and 3 months after the Acura division debuted. In comparison, Acura says it took Volvo 27 years to reach that mark, Mercedes-Benz 32 years, and BMW 35 years. Meanwhile, the Volkswagen Golf has passed the Model T Ford as the world's 3rd most produced vehicle. Volkswagen already holds the world's title with 22 million Beetles. The Beetle debuted in 1938 and continues to be produced in Brazil. The Toyota Corolla, launched in 1966, holds down the number 2 spot.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns spotting the early signs of fluid leakage by looking at the wheels and tires on your vehicle. Now, unless things are in really rough shape, you likely won't see any stains on the outside of the wheel tire assembly. And in this particular case, this is a fairly normal look to this wheel. But when we turn it around, we can see an obvious stain in this area right here, radiating out towards the tread. Now, this came off the rear of a rear-wheel drive vehicle, and we had a leaking rear wheel cylinder. Now, a leaking axle seal would produce the same type of a stain, and these are things that you would look for if you see stains like this occurring. Now, on the front wheels of a front-wheel drive car, it can be a whole different story. You can quite often find little specks of grease radiating all the way around the inside of the wheel tire assembly. That's the indication that you've got a broken or cracked CV boot. In any case, these are things that you should look at as soon as possible. If you see the signs of leakage on the inside of those wheels, check the brake fluid level first of all, and check axle oil levels if it's a rear-wheel drive vehicle. And these stains and their nature will vary according to the type of vehicle and the wheel position as well. But don't disregard them because they're usually signs of problems to come. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Kenzies Corner with Jim Kenzie.
The province of Ontario recently became the largest jurisdiction in the world to introduce photo radar on our highways. They're hoping for all sorts of reduced crashes and reduced deaths, but as we told you on an earlier program, other jurisdictions with photo radar have never been able to show any correlation between speed limit enforcement and the safety situation. It's a thinly veiled tax grab. And we also told you on that show that we were going to tell you how to beat photo radar. Well, it's not going to be easy. The government's erected all sorts of roadblocks in your way. First of all, any attempt to obscure your license plate is illegal. I don't know whether these polarized plate covers even work. I do know that radar detectors will pick up photo radar, but of course radar detectors are also illegal in the province of Ontario. The only way you can beat this is to try and fight it in court, and even there they've made it tough on you. No longer can you apply for a court case by the mail. You have to show up at a provincial court in person or send your agent. If you're going to fight a photo radar charge, I suggest you do hire either a lawyer or a paralegal who's experienced in these cases. The arguments are going to revolve around technicalities in the law and possibly Charter of Rights and Freedoms arguments because there's all sorts of unconstitutionality involved in this case. Now, the photo radar situation, as I mentioned, is simply to raise money. If we can block up the court system and clog the thing up so the money doesn't roll in, maybe they'll find other ways to get their revenues. In the province of Alberta, in Edmonton, Constable Rick Murdoch says he'd like to use photo radar in school zones, but radar vans are parked on highways because heavy traffic ensures more tickets and more money from fines for the provincial government. Now, if Ontario Provincial Police Superintendent Colin Britton or Premier Bob Ray would be as honest with us as the Edmonton police are, I'd be out of here. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, after stops in British Columbia, Alberta, and now Northern Ontario, Jeep Jamboree 94 is over for another year. But you can bet they'll be back next year. And while we're on the subject of off-roading, on next week's program we'll introduce a new segment on Motoring 95 entitled Off-Road Corner. We'll tell you more about it then, as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
TSN's Motoring 95 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life. And Midas, for brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service. Trust your car to Midas.